Okay, calm down.
You wrote an article at the Electronic Intifada, Israel is on its colonial deathbed. And you talk about unfathomable cruelty that Israel perpetuates, and you talk about state terrorism. Can you talk to us a little bit about this state terrorism?
I mean, from its inception, I mean, this is what, they've been genociding us since 1947. There was no social media back then and no videos that could be taken. But frankly, a lot of us are watching this, and especially like some of the elders are saying this is what happened to us. This is what they did to us in our village and so and so, and this is, it's kind of, they're reliving it, and this is what it was like. I think this is what it was like in this country against indigenous Americans. We're watching um, a moment in history that represents previous genocides that were not televised. Israel is it's a terrorist state. It practices terrorism on an industrial scale. Their terrorism is systematic. It is daily. It pervades every aspect of life. Going from your house to your work, you are passing through this apparatus of terrorism where you really have no control over your life, and you don't know if you're going to die from one moment to the next, or if you're going to get maimed or shot, or if it's a settler that's going to come after you, or one of their attack dogs, or a soldier, or somebody's gonna come and tear your house down, or if these fuckers are gonna knock your door down in the middle of the night and drag your children out. This happens on the daily, and it's just this slow, horrific reality that they have created for us. So yes, absolutely, it's a terrorist state. But the thing about that is, you know, that is completely unsustainable. And I think Hamas is teaching them that. You cannot live by your sword in a region where you are surrounded by hundreds of millions of Arabs and Muslims who see what you're doing and are just hating you because of what you're doing. People who have invited you repeatedly to integrate into the region, to become a normal society, to stop destroying the indigenous people in Palestine, live as equals and not as their lords, and integrate into the region with, with full economic freedom and movement and whatnot. But the problem is, this is the colonial arrogance. It's nothing new. It's just a very old script of people who believe that they are inherently better, more worthy than the people who live where they want to live. It's unthinkable for them to live with us as equals. It's unimaginable. And from our part, it is unimaginable that we will continue to live under their boot. And this is where Hamas comes in. I reject the idea that they are a terrorist organization. In fact, they have shown far greater morality, far greater dignity and humanity than Israel has at any moments in its existence. I mean, you just look at the way they have treated the hostages versus how Israel has treated Palestinian hostages. Of course, Israel's freaking out about it because the first thing they did was to, take all of these freed hostages into, sort of a debriefing situation, because they didn't want the same thing to happen as did with the first woman who was released, the 85 year old. But she was just effusive in her and talking so kindly about Hamas, and they didn't want that kind of a thing to happen again. I mean, and on the other hand, Israel regularly beats and tortures Palestinians. And recently, several of them have been tortured to death. The stories we are hearing coming out of the Palestinians who were released, they're bone chilling. Like,
Yeah.
what they're doing to Palestinians in their prisons is is horrifying.
I don't know if you saw this, Susan, but a released Palestinian prisoner says in Arabic that Israel held them in the cold without electricity, sprayed us with pepper spray, and left us to die. She never mentioned Hamas or a world like it, yet BBC translated it to, "No one helped us, only Hamas cared. We love them very much."
Yeah, I saw that. It was bizarre. And I listened to her speak in Arabic, and I was like, at no moment did she even mention Hamas.
Right.
BBC just inserted this random translation. It's just,
So crazy.
I swear, like the complicity of Western media is is just mind blowing. I mean,
Yeah.
they used to try and be a little bit more subtle about it. Now it's just, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And of course, they're pretending that there's no equivalence between the innocent hostages and the brutal terrorist prisoners, all of whom have, all this blood on their hands. And they'll never admit that so many of them weren't ever charged with anything.
The vast majority of them had not been charged or tried and have just been languishing in Israeli prisons. Also, Israel's picked up and kidnapped far more people than they've released.
Yes,
Just today,
right.
they grabbed, I think, like eight children between the ages of 10 and 15. And I mean, you see them dragging these little tiny bodies. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You are grown men
Yeah.
dragging these babies. And this is what they do, though. This has been the reality of Palestinian life for decades.
And Jeremy Scahill, as someone points out, I did see this on Democracy Now. He has a piece at The Intercept, and Democracy Now interviewed him, and he was saying that 233 out of the 300 people released by Israel have not been tried. Censored Man tweets out, "Why do you think Israel's not letting the released hostages speak to the press?" And
Yeah.
it's showing all these people. Yeah.
I mean, look at that. That's genuine. You see how that little girl and her
Yeah.
mom are looking at them? I mean, there's genuine affection and genuine fondness. And, you know, you never see a Palestinian and an Israeli exchanging that because there are tormentors.
Right.
And so who's really the terrorists here?
Yeah.
And even like some of the survivors from October 7th said that, Hamas came and they said, we're looking for the military. They came into their homes and they said, look, we're not going to bother you. I remember the story of this one woman who said that, they told her, look, we're Muslims.
Right. We won't
It's
hurt.
against religion to harm, innocents. And one of them asked them for a banana.
Banana. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and there've been other stories like that, and even that video that Israel was that propaganda video showing these two women who were, sort of caught in the middle, and they were hiding behind a car. And my first thought was, okay, if they're looking just to kill any Israelis, they could have killed those two women.
Right.
But they were specifically targeting military, and I think that they're not a terrorist organization. I frankly, I said this in a Instagram post today. Hamas is literally an army of orphans. All those children you see getting pulled from the rubble now, who've lost their families and lost everything, and they're shivering and they're shaking uncontrollably in some kind of shock that none of us can ever comprehend. Hamas is literally those children grown up. They were those kids in 2006 and 2009 and 2008, 2014, 2021. I don't know what Israel thinks they can do. Like, what kind of arrogance that you think you can do this to human beings over and over and lock them up in a concentration camp and expect that you're not going to get hit one of these days. And frankly, they have been hit and they have been humbled by a tiny group of guerrilla fighters with homemade weaponry mostly, and old, refurbished and repurposed Chinese and old Russian small weaponry. They are getting pummeled by them on land. I mean, obviously Hamas can't do anything in the air or in the sea, but Israel, from day one, they kept talking about rolling into Gaza and the land invasion. that it would be over in a week, and et cetera, et cetera. Hamas did the last hostage exchange in the middle of Gaza City, and Israel's been telling the world that they're in control of Gaza City, which is in the north. So they're lying. They've been underreporting their casualties. They're underreporting the number of tank losses and whatnot. But Al-Qassam brigades have been posting all of this. And when any of us go and post any of this stuff, including actually that hostage, the ones you just showed up with, with the girl waving, a lot of us tried to post that on Instagram and Meta, and they were taken down immediately.
By the way, there's more video of journalists talking about what the hostages reported. And then what's interesting is he mentions the older woman who you mentioned, that woman who, remember, she said shalom, the hostage who was released, she said shalom. This was earlier on. It was for humanitarian reasons. So here they are talking, and you'll hear them talk about the woman's last name, Lifshitz.
באבסן, דומה מאוד אגב לסיפור של יוחק'ה ליפשיץ. באבסן הם ירדו לתוך מנהרה ארוכה של קילומטרים, חלקן עברו אותה על גבי אופנוע, כשאיש חמאס מרכיב אותם על גבי אופנוע במנהרה. אחרות הלכו אותה ברגל, 4-5 קילומטר כנראה לאזור בית החולים של ח'אן יונס. שם רוב הזמן הם הוחזקו ביחד. עכשיו, הם מספרות סיפור, לא התעללו בהם, לא הפעילו כלפיהם אלימות. אוכל היה במשורה, לא היה הרבה אוכל, הם אכלו מעט, גם רואים על הגוף שלהם שכולם איבדו משקל. תרופות, היה ניסיון של אנשי החמאס לתת להם, אבל לא באופן סדיר. זאת אומרת, יום כן היו תרופות, יום לא היו תרופות, היה ניסיון לספק להם את התרופות הקבועות שלהם, לא תמיד זה עבד, אבל הם מתארות סיטואציה שחלק ניכר מהשבי הם עברו ביחד. כשהם עושים אחד לשני הרצאות, וכל אחד מספר סיפורים, ועושים פעילויות. השהות הזאת ביחד כנראה נתנה להם עוד קצת חוסן לעמוד בתנאים האיומים האלה של חיים מתחת לקרקע בשבי ובחוסר ודאות. חלקן ידעו, שמעו ברדיו במנהרה על קרובי משפחה שלהם שנרצחו בשבת השחורה. חלקן לא ידעו וקיבלו את הבשורה אתמול בערב מבני המשפחה, שנאלצו לספר להם שחלק מהמשפחה נרצח בשבת הזאת. אבל רוב הקהילה הזאת עברה למקום אחד, ובסך הכל הם מתארות תנאים סבירים שהם קיבלו שם מבחינת אנשי החמאס, אוכל, תרופות, ולא יחס אלים או התעללות כזו או אחרת.
הרבה פרטים מעניינים סיפרת כאן בדקות האחרונות. דבר אחד שאני לוקחת איתי זה איך הקיבוצניקים האלה שמרו על הקהילה שלהם, הקיבוצניקית, עם הרצאות ועם פעילויות משותפות, וזה מן הסתם מה שעזר להם מאוד.
אין לי ספק, זה החזיק אותם הרבה יותר חזקים כשהם היו ביחד, עם יכולת באמת לאינטראקציה, והרגישו את תחושת הקהילה גם בשבי.
אבל אני חושב שרבים מאיתנו, בטח בתקשורת הישראלית, חייבים סליחה ליוחק'ה ליפשיץ, שסיפרה בדיוק את הדברים האלה, ונתקלה ביחס צונן בלשון המעטה. אמרו עליה פיגוע הסברתי, אמרו שהיא משקרת למען בעלה שנשאר עדיין בשבי, אמרו שחמאס עשה לה תעמולה ושטיפת מוח לפני שהיא הגיעה. כל מילה מה שהאישה הזאת אמרה היה אמת, כמו שמה שהאנשים הללו מספרים, היא ישבה איתם, זה בדיוק אותה חבורה, זה בדיוק אותם סיפורים.
ואגב, אלה שחזרו אתמול, כבר הרימו היום טלפונים לבני משפחות אחרים, ואמרו להם, ראינו את בני המשפחה שלכם, הם בחיים, הם בסדר, יכלו להרגיע את המשפחות ולהגיד, יש עוד חיים, אנחנו ראינו אותם, הם חיים, הם בסדר.
It's just so crazy. You would never see this in US media coverage.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's segments of Israeli society now are starting to question things in general. I mean, I think there's the inquiry regarding how many people were killed by Israeli forces. That those inquiries are just starting to happen. I don't know if you saw that little girl that was released. She was one of the hostages, and her father, he had said he thought she had died, and he said that was the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
She came back. She was just, still a lovely, healthy little girl. And I think maybe some Israelis are seeing this and it's spurring a little bit of soul searching, I hope. But, yeah, nonetheless, I mean, I don't believe that Hamas is a terrorist organization, and I think history will have a very different story to tell about them.